Harsh Mander, formerly in the civil services, an activist in the Right to Food and Narega campaigns, and also someone who was part of the Karwane Mohabbat, an important initiative which took place earlier this year.
There's an evil sweeping our land, a storm of evil, of hate, of fear, of the dividing of people. And a permissive environment for acting out and speaking about hate. And this has been generated very clearly by a new kind of leadership which is emerging in many parts of the world, in India, in the United States, and other places. A leadership which reflects, amplifies, and legitimizes bigotry and hatred. And it is this leadership that has created an environment where people are acting out hate in ways that we have not seen before. Traveling across India, I found a mounting sense of fear that is settling down on the hearts of our Muslim brothers and sisters, of our Dalit brothers and sisters, in tribal areas of our Christian brothers and sisters. There's a sense that the state does not exist for us. And even more worrying than all of this is a climate of silence of the majority. A complete absence of a display of public compassion and solidarity when all of this is happening around us. Lynching, there have been incidents in the past, but this upsurge of incidents, India did a quick survey and said after 2010, 97% of cow-related violence have happened after Mr. Modi came to power. 84% of people killed are Muslims, 8% are Dalit, 6% is identity unknown. Why are we not speaking out? We might say, and rightly so, that hate violence is not new to India. In fact, we were born in a tornado of hate violence when 1 million people had died in Hindu-Muslim riots in both parts of India and Pakistan. But lynching is distinct because communal violence, however terrible it is bound by geography and by time. It happens in a particular location, it has a beginning, it has an end, and it slowly settles down. The spread may be very large, as in Gujarat. It may extend for long periods of time. But still, what happens with lynching is lynching gives a message that if you belong to that particular identity, you are not safe any longer. You're not safe in your own home. You're not safe if you're traveling on a train. You're not safe while walking down the street. You're not safe at work. You're always in danger of violence because of who you are and not what you do. And I felt as we see India changing before our eyes, as we see the unmaking of the idea of India around us, there is the obligation, the imperative that we must respond to this growing, legitimized, normalized climate of hate. But we have learned that darkness can never be fought with darkness. If you fight darkness with darkness, it will only get more dark. You can only fight darkness with light. And even if there's a storm of darkness all around us, lighting one lamp is still the way to fight that storm of darkness. I therefore believe that hatred can never be fought with hatred. If hatred is fought with another form of hatred, only hatred will deepen. The challenge of our times, I believe, is to find a new grammar of politics which is founded on the ideas of solidarity, of fraternity and of love. It is the fraternity that Dr. Ambedkar spoke about in the Constitution. We think about, we understand justice, liberty, equality. We don't practice it. But least of all do we understand fraternity. Fraternity literally means brotherhood. We're also talking about the sisterhood of all people. It is the idea that we belong with and to each other. That your pain is also pain that affects me. If Pehlu Khan is being lashed on his back, I feel the pain on my back. When Junaid was killed in a train close to where I live in Delhi, everybody on the train compartment watched while this young boy was stabbed many times over, and some people goaded, some people watched, some people took videos, but no one came to his aid. I went and visited his family afterwards, and I wrote an article which started with the words, Junaid was my son. I did not know him when he was alive. His world was very different from mine. But in the manner that he was killed, I mourn him as though he was my son. And I described then what happened, and I end with the words, Junaid was my son, but he was also the son of those who were traveling with him on that train, and yet they let him die. And it is that idea of fraternity. Dr. Ambedkar would tell us that justice, liberty and equality can never become the natural order of things unless there is fraternity between us. The Hindi word in the Constitution is bandhuta, and I find it a beautiful word. The idea that we are bound to and with each other. When I talk of love as radical politics, I also must think about Mahatma Gandhi. We may have many differences with some of his beliefs, but I think, think of 1947. Think of a time when 1 million people have died in Hindu-Muslim riots, and 14 million people have been displaced from their homes, the largest displacement in human history, including my own family, which came from Pakistan. And think of somebody who fought all his life for Hindu-Muslim unity. At that moment, he still says, you might have created a country on the basis of religion, but I still believe that this is a country that belongs equally to all. And in his last months, which Irfan Habib rightly describes as his finest hour, think of a time when he sat on hunger strike for 40 days in Calcutta, and nothing but his spirit and his love brought people finally to peace. Lord Mountbatten wrote that what 55,000 of my armed soldiers could not do in Punjab, one frail man with his resolve and his love was able to do in Calcutta. And then he came to Delhi, and his last battle in Delhi, something, I live in Delhi, we forget our histories very fast. Trainloads and trainloads of people coming on both sides, everybody killed. Refugee camps full of Hindus and Sikhs who had been displaced from their homes and lost their families, crowding Delhi. And with enormous anger, they took over, they occupied every mosque and dargah in Delhi and placed idols and said, there's no place for Muslims here. And they drove the Muslims out of their homes and occupied them. And Mahatma Gandhi's last battle, 2 weeks before he died, was a hunger strike where he demanded that that Hinduism will have no meaning as a faith if we forcefully occupy a single mosque. And India, the soul of India will get emptied out if minorities, Muslims, Dalits cannot live in this country without fear in their hearts. And it is that resolve that led to people finally, there was enormous anger, and Irfan Habib reminds us that what he was actually saying was that people who had been displaced from Pakistan, living in camps, went and occupied and started living in Muslim people's homes, he was saying, get out of those homes, give it back to the Muslims, and go back and live in camps. It requires extraordinary courage and love to be able to make that demand and for it to be heard and heeded. And if India, we still can have hope in India, it is because of that moment of radical love. And it is that love that I think we need to find in our hearts. And so we went out on this caravan, and I felt that we needed to do two things in this caravan. One is a voice of solidarity with people who had lived with this hatred and fear, and a voice of conscience to the majority community, to all of us, to break our silences. There were many things that we saw during this caravan. I would take a long time, many days actually, to share with you, but I'll say a few things. First was how we started in Assam. We went through Assam, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Delhi, UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, and ended up in Gujarat. We talked about 78 incidents. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We found these incidents happening everywhere, not even being reported. The extraordinary level of hatred. We started our caravan in Nagaon, and the two boys, two young teenage boys going out fishing. Somebody says they're cow thieves and they're lynched to death. But when their parents get their bodies, their eyes have been gouged out, their ears have been cut off, and nobody can understand where is this hatred. We went to Mangalore, near Mangalore. A boy called Harish Pujari had been lynched. I wrote, and I remember at that time is it even more tragic that he was killed because he was a Hindu mistaken to be a Muslim? He was riding pillion behind his friend's back on a bike, and they attacked him. And when his body came to his family, his intestines had been taken out, etc. And his family cannot understand. I mean, obviously, they were strangers. They didn't even know who he was. They thought he was a Muslim. But to hate him so much that you mutilate his body and send it back. The second thing that we saw was lynching as a public spectacle. Almost every incident of lynching is accompanied by people taking videotapes of it. And it's completely extraordinary. So in Ramgarh, for instance, where in Jharkhand, you see this man leaves in a car from his home, and after an hour in the market, suddenly this amount of meat appears from somewhere, and they say he was carrying this amount of meat, and it's a cow thing, and then they attack, the mob attacks, and they start videotaping his lynching, and they send it by WhatsApp. In real time, his son receives that video while his father is being lynched, and he doesn't know what to do. He gets onto a bike and tries to rush there because he's so young, he doesn't know how to drive. He has an accident. By the time they reach, the man is dead. We saw, and this idea of lynching as a public spectacle by videographing, it means that you think of it as an act of valor. You know that the police is going to protect you, and you want to give a message to that community. There is the state protection in every single case that we saw. We met 55 families. The police consistently makes the victim the accused and takes action against them. It does everything to protect. In some cases, they don't even describe it as a lynching. They say it's just an act of rash driving, and those people died in rash driving and animal smuggling, cow smuggling. There's a complete absence of public compassion at the local level. People did not, that perhaps most of all, this idea that there is no remorse that we encounter. I've seen in the worst riots, people save lives, people reach out, but here you're just seeing, something has happened in our society. And then with the Muslim victims, we kept hearing this word sabr, that we will endure, that there is no possibility of justice. They don't pursue. If you go to the police, they're going to register cases only against you. So you just endure. But with the Dalits, this was the only saving grace, that with all the Dalit families that we visited on the journey, there was a sense of anger, there was a sense of assertion, they were fighting back, and that was a difference. The Dalit still, at its worst, still believes that this country belongs to them and they have a right over it. To the Muslim, we are communicating this country doesn't belong to you. If you're here as a second-class citizen. You can make no demands. You have to live here in those second-class, as a second-class citizen. We've resolved that we have to continue this karma. We've resolved that we'll go every month at least to one state where hate violence has happened, and do the same thing. Go to the families, seek their forgiveness, say that you're not alone, that we care, to resolve to help, fight continuously for justice, and to tell the story. And so we ask for chroniclers, we ask for writers, photographers. We have to tell the story. I have to keep telling you the story till your conscience aches unbearably. And that is my resolve. We'll have to keep talking about it. We'll have to break the silences. This is not the India and the world that I am prepared to continue to live in. It cannot be the India that you live in. And there can be only 3 reasons for our silences. And I'll end here. The first of them is that I'm scared to speak. I'm frightened to speak. And there is a climate of fear. The second is that I don't care. I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Dalit, I'm not, how does it matter to me? But the third and the most dangerous of the 3 reasons possibly for my silences can be that in my heart I actually carry those same sentiments of hate. And I'm happy that the mob is actually doing my work for me. I've outsourced my hate to that mob. And I think we need to, when I'm saying I want your conscience to hurt, I also demand from you that you answer to yourself, what are the reasons for our silences? Which of these 3 reasons apply to me? And we need to resolve what kind, I'm leaving right from here after this, going to Rajsamand where this latest incident has happened. We just don't know where and what we are going to do to reclaim an idea of an India which Dr. Ambedkar talked about, which is based on love and solidarity. Thank you.